Hi, my dear Astro family. So today we are going to be talking about Uranus in Gemini. This is another big shift that is going to be taking place in 2025 as well as 2026. Why is that? Because Uranus will be entering the sign of Gemini July 7th, 2025, and then it's going to be going back into the sign of Taurus. And then finally, it's going to be moving into the sign of Gemini again, 2026, April 25th. So Uranus has got an 84-year cycle. So every 84 years, Uranus will be in the same sign. So the very last time it happened was between 1941 to 1949. So of course, that might be giving us a clue what to expect from this Uranus in the sign of Gemini. But before I break it down for you, I'm going to tell you how this format is going to be working. First of all, we are going to be discussing what Uranus is. We're going to be looking at the archetype of Gemini as well. And then we're going to put them together. I'm going to try to bring up one positive and one negative manifestation of Uranus in the sign of Gemini so we can see the contrast. And yeah, and I would like you to share your personal opinion of what to expect with Uranus in Gemini. So put it down in your in the comment box below. And also it's worth having a look at where Uranus comes from in your natal chart. So first of all, a tip here. What house Uranus will be triggering for you? That's going to be one to look at. And then secondly, where does that come from? How many signs away it is from the natal position? So for example, Uranus will be entering my fourth house, and Uranus comes from the 10th. So basically, it's going to be 7 signs away from its natal position. Therefore, any type of work and collaborations, because natally Uranus is in the 10th house, work and collaboration will be impacting somehow my home life. So this is one of the ways how you can actually read this in your natal chart. Now, I have got some very interesting courses coming up, and the good news is that I've got a massive discount running at the end of summer promotion, and it's going to be 30% on personal readings, as well as about 40% on certain type of courses and webinars. I'm going to be actually introducing some new courses. One of them is about family dynamics. I'm going to be launching a synastry course as well. And because synastry is highly connected with sexuality as well, so therefore I'm going to be doing a sexology astrology course as well, where we're going to be looking at the compatibility from a sexual point of view too. This is a little bit of a bizarre topic, I believe, but I think intimacy is big part of synastry as well. So, of course, I wanted to give you a little bit of a knowledge over this. Let's get started. So, oh, and then one more thing. I am going to be preparing about 10 videos about 2025 and 26. It's going to be approximately about 15 hours worth of materials. I have prepared loads. So please show your gratitude and subscribe to the channel, like the videos, make a comment in the comment box below. And most importantly, probably ring the notification bell as well so you can keep updated, because next month I'm going to be releasing free of charge 1 hour, 1.5 hour long videos for each of the signs, what they can be expecting in 2025 and 2026. That I would like you to join my YouTube family so you can get all these goodies. Now, let's get going. What does Uranus in the sign of Gemini represent? So first of all, let's have a look at the Uranus archetype a little bit. First of all, Uranus is said to be the ruler of Aquarius. Not too sure if I actually agree with that, to be frank. I did make a webinar on this, why I think Uranus cannot be the ruler of Aquarius. You do not need to agree with me, but I think it would not necessarily make sense for multiple reasons. But I'm going to give you some keywords to Uranus. It electrifies. It brings sudden events into our life. Often it brings shocks, even intuitive hits, a certain type of illuminations. But also Uranus is connected to rejection, traumatic experiences, as well as something to do with shame. Shame as in being rejected by others or being outcasted, feeling like the black sheep of the family. Also, it represents criminality, revolution. It's quite eccentric energy. It focuses on future. Often you can feel alienated with a very prominent Uranus in your chart, but also represents aliens as well. With Uranus, things come out of the blue. It is the planet of breakup, breakthroughs, and breakdowns. It is a genius type of archetype, but also it is being a rebel as well at the same time. Usually it comes with loads of surprises, but also it represents deviations, distrusts, awakening, unpredictability, um, Uranus is connected to individuation also, but it's not necessarily about the individuality. And that's important to mention. Uranus comes with loads of chaos. It also represents technology, electricity. Often, this is a risk taker planet. It wants you to get out of the comfort zone, basically. So that's where the risk taking comes up. And also, often Uranus gives you unique opportunities as well. So, these are some of the important keywords of Uranus. Now, I would be able to talk about Uranus quite a lot, of course, and I will be doing so in November. I will be holding 3 webinars actually on Uranus. And one of them is going to be about Uranus in psychology. So, what does Uranus mean in the psyche? So, now we understand a little bit more about Uranus, at least with keywords. So, let's have a look at the Gemini archetype a little bit. And then after we can put them together. That would be the whole idea. Remember, my videos are not necessarily about just telling you what this means. I try to kind of like teach you about the aspects of astrology so you can put it together yourself as well. Now, Gemini is the very last sign of the first quarter. It is a mutable masculine energy. This is pretty much the end of the spring era. Its ruler is Mercury, and it's more actually the day expression of Mercury. Being an air sign, it kind of represents communication, the way we connect with others. Think about the air we breathe in, and that air allows you to speak, allows the word to travel, and therefore can be heard by others as well. The spring element, the fact is that the weather is getting hotter, and also mutability indicates that something is about to change. We can feel that in the temperature also, because some of the days it's going to be a little bit more rainy if you think about the end of the spring, and some days are going to be kind of like resembling the summer, right? Because it's getting hotter as well. So something that was stable is actually about to change because we've got this shift between Taurus to Gemini. Now, Uranus will electrify those changes. It's going to speed it up. So there were slow changes happening in the sign of Taurus, and then all of a sudden, things going to start speeding up. Gemini is connected to information. Actually, it is the merchandiser, the agent, right? So in the sign of Taurus, we were focusing on security. So this is going to talk to us about the secure information, how to make the information more secure. So therefore, the security of information, let's call it that way. So therefore, I feel like data protection is going to be a major topic coming up with Uranus entering the sign of Gemini. And maybe this is going to be changing. Maybe it's going to get stricter, or maybe it's just going to be thrown out of the window completely. As I said, Uranus represents criminalities. So it looks like companies will, unfortunately, disregard your kind of like the Data Protection Act. Let's put it that way. You know, Gemini is communicative, it's flexible, it represents curiosity. Each sign can kind of represent three levels, by the way. The lower, the kind of like the normal manifestation of the sign, and the higher vibration of the sign. The very lower one is the trickster, someone who needs to know and manipulates actually others to get to know certain type of information. Then we've got the agent archetype who wants to do actually good, but it does not connect on an emotional level with people. And then we have got the pontifex archetype to Gemini, who is the bridge between the physical world and the spiritual realm. Remember, Gemini is a double-bodied sign, so often actually it indicates uh, either having to make a decision, and with Uranus, we have to be making the decision pretty quickly, or it could also indicate that, I mean, Gemini is a little bit more spiritual than people tend to think, by the way. And I don't want to go into the mythological part of Gemini because I do not want to bore you with that now, but just take it that it's a little bit more spiritual than you think. And obviously, that's the higher vibration, the bridge between the physical world and the spiritual realm. And Uranus is quite spiritual. Some people tend to believe that Uranus is the ruler of astrology. So, of course, Uranus being in the sign of Gemini could indicate how astrology is going to be changing quite significantly. Of course, Uranus is coming out of Taurus and moving into the sign of Gemini. So on one hand, this is going to talk to us about how to sell the accumulated goods, right? So we have accumulated certain type of things in the sign of Taurus. Now we are ready to sell that. Gemini is the second sign from Taurus, so money made from certain type of resources that we have collected. So it looks like potentially there is going to be a lot of kind of like discounts and bargains, and maybe we're just going to be getting rid of certain type of things that we have been collecting for a very long time. You know, in Gemini, we realize that something is missing. It is telling us that, you know, we deliver a message, but it cannot be partial. This is the very first dual sign. Duality can indicate many things, right? For example, two-faced, being two-faced, but also multi-layered as well at the same time. So we might be seeing, you know, that, oh, people are two-faced with that Uranus being there. Or imagine that there are companies and then, you know, running two different kind of like projects, for example. You know, with Gemini, we need to be looking at things from multiple angles. But as I said, inside there is something missing. Gemini is kind of like a twin archetype. So I'm missing my twin. That is why it is collecting information and learns all the time, because I need to be able to find that missing puzzle. But Gemini also collects, but not like Taurus. Gemini is a little bit like a bee, delivers the pollen onto the uh, flower. So there is the delivery system. Delivery will be changing quite significantly. You know, this Uber Eats, and all those type of companies, they might have a major chaos coming up. And one of the reasons why, because of technological advancements. But I'm going to talk about that. I think it's important that we go through the Gemini archetype. It's going to make sense when I am going to be describing some of my predictions. So just stay tuned, stay till the very end, because I think it's worth it. Now, Gemini wants to know everything, but they never want to get bogged down. They are unable to live in a closeted environment. They are interested in everything new and they want to share what they have experienced or learned with others as well. Kind of like Gemini is one of the favorite sentences they use. Oh, just imagine what happened. Did you hear that? Gemini also wants to bring differences together. I mean, even look at the symbol of Gemini and then you would understand what I'm talking about. So Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and it's very interesting that Mercury is the smallest planet in our solar system and the one that is closest to the sun. It takes Mercury 88 days to complete one revolution in its orbit, and it's the speediest planet of all as well. And minutes after his birth, he stole a herd of cows from his brother Apollo, obscuring their trail by making the herd walk backwards. And when confronted by Apollo, Hermes denied the theft. And the brothers were finally reconciled when Hermes gave Apollo his newly invented music tool, and received from him in exchange of the herald's staff. So that would be a little bit of a mythology behind Mercury. So obviously, Gemini is kind of like a little bit the messenger. But also, Mercury was the god of shepherds, flocks, and herds. Mercury represented something to do with the god of stadiums and gymnasiums, the god of winds, and also the god of dreams as well. Before Neptune was discovered, Mercury represented actually dreams. So, but we don't want to talk much about Mercury, though. We want to focus on the Gemini, and we should never mix up the sign with the planet, even though they show certain type of similarities, but they are actually not the same. Mercury is actually a non-binary planet. Their gender is not so visible or not important, actually. And please remember this sentence because this is going to be pretty important. Also, when it comes to Gemini, you know, some of the sports that belong here is the merchandiser, the translator. They are not necessarily suited for 9 to 5 jobs. Teaching, tour guides, taxi driver, anything that relates to customers, like news agents, writing, editing. Editing is a little bit more Virgo-like, by the way, but the TV reporter, for example, you know, these are all um, some of the jobs that belong there. So obviously, Uranus can electrify all those, or it can change them quite significantly. The change of transportation is going to be one of the topics that I'm going to be talking to you about shortly. You know, Gemini wants to be up to date with all gossips. They are open to anything new. They love browsing on the net. They might be reading, talking, and cooking at the same time. So this is the juggler as well. They want to be well-rounded. They're always on the go. They love traveling around, physically and mentally fit, and this as they move around a lot. They do not cope well with being alone. And when they have to be alone, they have to do something or they feel bored. So these are, you know, let's talk a little bit about the fears of Gemini as well. That might be important because Uranus' counterpart is actually Saturn. So Gemini often is afraid of boring situations, the fear of being alone or having to be quiet, afraid of commitments or taking responsibilities. They do not like rules. They are afraid if they cannot see the rationality in something. And when they have to choose only one thing, they also scared. And often they are afraid of intimacy as well. Because when they fall in love, they cannot think in a rational way anymore. Why are we talking about fears? Neither Gemini nor Uranus is associated with fear. The reason why we are talking about that is because Saturn is the counterpart of Uranus. So therefore, when Uranus brings certain type of changes, sudden changes, and those are connected to these fears, then it can cause major chaos. So it's good to be aware of these. But one other thing, you know, which might be very important to connect to Gemini, and those are the scripts. They easily get annoyed. They are really good at doing things. Um, but they easily get annoyed when someone criticizes them, for example, or actually they inspire others to be part of something, but often they realize it was actually a mistake to do so. Um, or they need a partner who is going to allow them to remain a child. From a psychological point of view, Gemini is pretty much the representation about age to 5 to 9. So obviously that would be something to do with you starting school, and there is basically a separation anxiety going on because you are not with your parents anymore, right? And somehow you're missing that type of connection. Obviously, you're going to be excited as well at the same time. And they are also afraid of having to grow up because it means I have to become responsible as well. So these are some of the keywords that we might want to be remembering when we talk about Gemini. Remember, Gemini has got something to learn from other signs as well. So from Sagittarius, Gemini needs to learn to go on a bigger scale, to have faith or to believe in something more spiritual. And they have to have moral code as well. From Virgo, they're going to be learning reliability. From Pisces, they're going to be learning empathy and intuition. But we also learn from Taurus, and that's stability and endurance. And from Cancer, to get in touch with feelings. We all have got a Gemini house cusp somewhere in our charts. Wherever that cusp is, you're going to have to be flexible. You're going to have to explore things. You're going to have to be curious. And also where you need to be collecting information. What area of life you must be able to talk about, and what area of life you need to be making connections. So, for example, if you have got it in the fourth house, you have to be collecting data about your parents, about where you want to live, for example, how much a property costs. You're going to have to be a little bit more on the cautious side. And maybe you have to be talking about all issues that have hurt you while you were a child, about your upbringing, and so forth. Those are all helpful. Okay, now we looked at the archetype of Uranus, we looked at the archetype of Gemini. So let's put them together. Well, first of all, we have got some exciting times ahead of us, for sure. Uranus is the planet of excitement. And Gemini does not like boredom, as I said. So it's going to be a little bit of a chaotic period. Um, so, on one hand, this is going to talk to us about intellectual curiosity. What does that really mean? It means that we want to be able to reach heights. Because Uranus is actually the planet of sky as well. It's kind of like the space travel, for example. What is behind Pluto? This is going to talk to us about the discovery of different type of new, like technological advancements. This is going to be about the curiosity about the brain, for example, how the brain functions, how we can boost the brain, for example, how we can even modify, because Uranus is quite artificial, how we can modify brain waves, and so on. But I believe this also bring educational changes as well. It can talk to us about breakthroughs in how we think, how we communicate, how we process information, also how we learn as well. So I think education will be changing significantly. Remember, we had the nodes, for example, in 2020, 2021, in the sign of Gemini and Sagittarius. And education changed pretty much, right? Because everything went online. So Uranus will kind of intensify that. Also, maybe what I'm thinking with this education is that there is going to be new ways of studying. So most likely, you know what, AI is going to be introduced at schools somehow to simplify, on one hand, how kids study or to kind of speed it up, but also what's worth studying and what's not. This could become a major question. It really feels like online learning is the new way we're going to go for. And definitely, it's all about technological tools we're going to be using for education. Um, yeah, maybe we're not going to have like books anymore, pretty much at schools, because it's all going to be audio. Something is going to pretty much talk to you on your laptop or tablet or whatever it is. Also on a personal level, this could indicate that you are going to be learning something that you could have never imagined before. Like maybe you rejected that idea. Oh, I'm not going to study, I don't know, computer science. I'm not going to study astrology. And then you end up studying it anyway, somehow. Gemini represents the brain. So, brain technology, brain research, brain discoveries, most likely going to be a huge topic. And of course, when we look at all these technological changes, a lot has happened in the last probably 7, 8 years, and you think, where can this go? Well, what you see now is nothing just yet. So it looks like it's going to really revolutionize the world. You know what? Gemini rules cars. So faster cars, faster planes, faster public transport, for example. I have been talking about travel in air, like the flying cars and so forth, for a few years now. And I remember the very first time when I mentioned it, some people actually laughed at me. And then it is happening already. You know, I can even imagine that studying astrology might become completely different as well, due to certain discoveries, new theories, and so forth. Gemini is a little bit of a researcher. It might be just scratching, the surface with all the information, but it sometimes finds, very important pieces of the puzzle, and then Scorpio takes it further. Um, and I can imagine that astrology is going to become a major topic in the upcoming years. I can even imagine that this is going to get regulated. And or maybe astrology going to become more accepted, or people actually will reject it. I can imagine that students are going to be more on strikes, for example. Often that happens with Uranus, going on streets and doing demonstrations. But also Gemini rules neighborhood countries as well. So it looks to me that the relationship between neighborhood countries will be weird, quite chaotic. It could also talk to us about the sudden changes of borders, the sudden changes how the countries are trading between each other, what they sell to each other, and so forth. So I have spoken about that already in previous videos. I'm not going to be mentioning, but Uranus kind of confirms that as well. This could really talk to us about chaos on the roads, and we're going to have to, I mean, we're talking about traffic jam, of course. So we must use more of the airspace, or they need to be regulating something around about who can use the roads. That's how I can imagine. As I said, the delivery system is going to change drastically as well. So whether we're talking about, like everything is going to be online and so forth, most likely cash is going to be disappearing. We are aware of that, I guess. So Uranus will speed things up. Some astrologers associate Gemini with currencies. Some associates them with Taurus. I understand both rationales behind, you know, but Uranus in Gemini surely will be, accelerating this change. It can also indicate that there will be chaos at the borders. It can be because of immigration. It could be because of the borders are falling down or a wall is going to be put up. I've spoken about this as well, how I think this might be affecting the world in the Neptune in Aries video, I believe. But what I mean by here is because certain things are happening in the sign of Gemini, but it's affecting the Sagittarius part of the chart as well. And Sagittarius is about visa matters. It is about distribution of something. Something is spreading there. So this is really much talking to me about possibly, the migration situation and having to somehow slow it down, or, flights are going to get delayed and so forth. All this type of stuff I'm expecting with Uranus in the sign of Gemini. Also, I mean, you typically when Uranus is in Gemini, then all of a sudden the regional tourism tends to be a little bit more popular. So it's very much about discovering the neighborhoods we live in. But I can imagine such things as different computer language. So studying programming could become some source of income. Let's just put it that way. As I said, do not forget that the nodes were in Gemini in 2020 and 21. And that was the time when education changed a lot. That was the time when Zoom, became extremely popular. And at the beginning, there was actually chaos with Zoom because they could not keep up. They needed a few weeks to get things sorted because the demand was extremely strong. So that's exactly how you need to be able to imagine Uranus in the sign of Gemini. Like imagine that the shortage of phones or certain type of things, such shortage of certain type of such things like I just mentioned, and it's gonna bring certain type of chaos at the beginning. I mean, as I said the last time we had Uranus in the sign of Gemini was 1941 and 1949. And I have to mention this because obviously the Second World War started in 1939, but USA joined the war in 41, just straight after Uranus went into the sign of Gemini, by the way. And what happened then? The world got divided. The borders got reorganized. So I'm expecting something similar. I can imagine that EU is going to start falling apart, and most likely another country will be leaving. Brexit started pretty much at the end of Uranus being um, in sorry, I'm getting Pisces, yeah, which is also the sister sign of Gemini. So new rules of traveling, maybe new road signs, new theory tests on how to drive. Of course, the smart cars will be extremely popular. Maybe talking cars. So we're going to have a kit, Night Rider car type of things, which I know kind of like exists already, but we are talking about the popularization of those. Also, while Uranus moves into Gemini, remember that the nodes are going to be in the sign of Pisces and Virgo as well. So this is the repetition exactly of 2020, just in different ways. Because Uranus was in Taurus already. But we had the nodal axis getting activated there too. It was just Gemini and I'm sorry, Gemini and Sagittarius. And anyway, we're gonna talk about that as well a lot more because what I'm trying to say here is that the border issues changed around that time too, and there were certain type of health crises as well. So it really feels like the travel industry will be changing, and I would say that the travel industry might be changing, not necessarily immediately at the beginning of it. Probably somewhere in the middle of it. So from 28 to 30, 2028 to 30, when the nodes are going to be in mutable signs again. Gemini also represents trade, sales, and businesses. So it looks like that, businesses are gonna kind of be weird. Like who wants to do business with a certain type of country? Gemini is a double-bodied sign. So it looks like that, I'm having to make a decision whether I'm going to be doing business with you or I'm going to be doing business with someone else. And Uranus, brings chaos with connections as well. So it looks to me that like connections between neighborhood countries are going to get severed. Uranus is kind of like a thunderbolt, something that worked really well. All of a sudden, it doesn't work. Even imagine the thunderbolt as well. It actually cuts things through in a way. But it also shows that a country can get divided into two, or just like it happened with India when Britain left India in 1947. So Uranus being rebellious, this could really talk to us about wanting to become one somehow. So therefore, I'm walking away from a potential partner. So there is a huge emphasis on independence here. We're going to see some countries becoming independent. I was looking at certain charts in Europe. Obviously, I'm interested in Europe on one hand. And I was thinking there are potentially three countries that might be, or one of them might be leaving the EU. And it would be Italy, Greece, or Spain, astrologically speaking. But even politically speaking, it would make sense because they always complain when there are a lot of migrations going on because they are the first one to be hit. And there are certain type of rules in the EU that you kind of have to provide to those before they leave the country type of thing. So it really affects them. And they tend to be complaining quite a lot. So I remember seeing an interview with the Polish Prime Minister recently, and he said he was never going to allow any immigrants. He allowed Ukrainians, but he would never allow Muslims and stuff like that, for example, because he just wants to keep the country safe. And that's what he promised to his people, and so forth. So he was accused of being racist. So that's the type of Uranus in the sign of Gemini. But also, invention is a big keyword to Uranus. So revolutionary phones and cars, everything to be smart, probably even your underwear is going to be talking to you, everything to be digitalized. There is this intellectual curiosity with this combination. So this is about figuring things out, about data and facts, probably certain type of data that are going to be seen or come to light are going to be very shocking. And the duality part with Gemini, it's going to be dividing people. It's good or it's bad type of thing. Oh, this is the good data, this is the bad data type of stuff. It's somehow the evil necessity or, oh, I love it type of thing. So there's going to be a lot of talk about this. I can imagine a major computer virus that will bring chaos in the world. Now, the gender question topic with Gemini, I think I have been talking about this as well for years. And I think Uranus gonna make it quite, shocking. I would call it as the war of genders, it feels like to me. Kind of like maybe ganging up against the outcasted members of the society and their rights. But there is a movement going on, Gemini, with with people who feel somehow ashamed of their sexuality and so forth. And when you look at the chart, the ingression chart of Uranus, Uranus actually conjuncts Venus. So, of course, that could indicate that not only intimacy and relationships are going to be changing quite significantly. And I think this Uranus in Gemini will bring a lot of breakups and a lot of um, kind of like, I don't want to be in a relationship type of mentality. But it can also indicate that the money is going to be changing quite significantly. Gemini also rules courses. So it really looks to me that the desire of students of going to university is gonna kind of go down a little bit, and they might want to go for short courses rather than studying, I don't know, 10 years at the university, for example. Maybe we're talking about shortened lectures. So like not 8 hours at school and so forth. Let's just do, I don't know, 3, 4 hours because this is the realization that people are unable to pay attention to teachers and so forth for such a long time. Now, Gemini is a humanitarian sign as well. Every single air sign is quite humanitarian. So this is telling us that we have got a change to humanity. It's very much on the collective level. And while in Uranus, it really, in the sign of Taurus, it wanted us to come out of our comfort zone and then start looking at things differently. If we didn't do so in the sign of Taurus, then here in the sign of Gemini, it kind of starts forcing us. And I think the chaos is going to be coming from the fact because there is still the stubbornness there about certain type of changes or the inability to keep up with all these changes. And obviously, when we don't like something, then unfortunately, we're going to demonstrate about it and so forth. But also, maybe it could indicate that we're going to have plenty of new ideas of how we should live our life, you know, um, and Uranus, some people believe that Uranus represents groups. So it looks like that we have got these smaller groups that are going to be emerging. Now, let's talk about the unpleasant stuff. I was really hesitating whether I should do this or not, and whether I should give this title to my video or not, because, people get upset easily, but I decided that I'm going to do so anyway. Because Uranus will be impacting the USA a lot. So when we look at the US Sibley chart, US has got a Sagittarius rising sign. So therefore, Gemini is the seventh house cusp. We call that particular point in the chart as the descendant. So when we look at Uranus past transits, the last time it happened, US actually got involved in World War II, starting in 1941, ended around 45. The one before that was the US Civil War, 1861 to 1865. The one before that, 1774 to 1782, that was the American Revolutionary War. So whenever Uranus was in the sign of Gemini, very close to the ascendant degree, actually war happened. Um, so am I making the prediction that there is gonna be a war? Yes, I am making that prediction. I think this is coming. I think we can feel it in the air. I think, by the way, the ascendant of USA is 12 degree of Sagittarius. So therefore, Uranus is, I mean, Uranus, when it hits 12 degree of, not necessarily 12, it's going to be somewhere around 9 to 12 degree. So if I want to tell you when exactly that is happening, and unfortunately, I kind of forgot to check that, but I'm going to quickly have a look at that for you. Then we pretty much talking about 2026, 27, sorry, because in 26, Uranus is going to go retrograde around 5 degree of Gemini. When Uranus hits approximately about 9 degree, so that's 2027 July onwards. Uranus will be going retrograde on 9 degree as well. Yeah. So, yeah, I had to make this prediction, unfortunately. Why I'm picking the 9 degree. I mean, first of all, uh, the American Civil War, Uranus was on 9 Gemini and Neptune was on 0 Aries. Neptune is going to be moving into the sign of Aries next year also, and then in 26. And Uranus will be on that 9 degree of Gemini. And by the way, the war ended when Uranus was on 26 degree of Gemini. Now, in the Second World War, Uranus was actually on 27 degree of Taurus. And with Uranus, was when it ended, it was a 19 degree of Taurus. You know what I've noticed? That there is always approximately about a 17, 18 degree Uranus has to travel to finish a war. In all instances, all 3 instances, it was about 17, 18 degree. So obviously we're talking about a 4 or 5 year of possible war. But is it going to be a war like it used to be? I don't think so. We're talking about, technological war here. So we're going to be talking about, I don't know, drones and like hacking internet system and I don't know, crashing your computers type of things and so forth. Also, by the way, US will have its Uranus return as well, 2027 July. And I looked at the aspects there. There are some difficult aspects, but I might be making a video about USA separately, but I don't want to, I don't want to upset people, but I had to be talking about this. Uranus in Gemini could really talk to you about cyber attacks, for example. Even I looked at the 1942, 1949 Uranus in Gemini period. You know what? The first computers were actually built around that time. It was actually because they wanted to crack encrypted communications between the Nazis. But I looked at 1858, 1866 as well, the other Gemini period. And there was this transatlantic communication cables were laid down. So there were, direct communication between US and Europe. And then I looked at the one before, 1697, post office happened. Then in 1440, 1447, actually, we had the printing revolution happening. Can you see all these Gemini traits there? Obviously, talking about books, this is going to talk to us about digital books. Probably libraries will disappear. Libraries are ruled by Virgo, by the way. And I find it interesting that the South Node is going to be in the sign of Virgo. Also, it could really talk to us about battery issues, electricity issues as well. Uranus rules both of those. It could, even microwaves. Maybe certain type of discoveries are going to be made about microwaves. Maybe microwaves are going to be replaced somehow. Also, Gemini rules um, kind of like the nerve system as well. And Uranus is definitely nerve system too. So neurological discoveries are going to be major. Maybe, I can also imagine that neighborhoods are going to be connected. What I mean by that is that maybe, because of overpopulation, for example, the gaps between two villages and two towns are going to get smaller and then, they become one basically. But also it can indicate that certain towns and cities are going to be redesigned completely. Surveillance system could become quite a major one. Electric cars, space travel, UFO topic. There's going to be a lot of talks about UFOs. We might have spoken quite a lot about these, obviously, in the Pluto in Aquarius video I made. But now we've got two planets in air signs, two technological planets, surely this is going to be a big topic. What we need to understand with Uranus, that it brings a lot of revolutionary ideas in the sign of Gemini, but usually it comes with an element of a chaos. And typically it's because of the shortages of certain type of resources. So the demand is huge for, I don't know, for those phones and stuff like that. But we do not have enough kind of like hands to create them in a way. And I think the source of power is going to be changing quite significantly as well, or how we charge the phones. So the chargers are going to be completely different as well. Maybe it's Gemini rules wind. So the wind power could become more important. Obviously, the solar power and so on. The other big topic could be obviously social media, the freedom of speech. So I can imagine the disappearance of certain type of social media channels, but I can also imagine huge announcements made by these social media moguls as well. You know, both Uranus and Gemini are connected to networking. The news system. There was another big discoveries that these like these 24-hour news channels were introduced during Uranus in Gemini era as well. So this is talking to me about the changes of social media. Obviously, AI is right at the corner, right? And that's going to be extremely popular. I can even imagine that you're going to be able to somehow something that is going to be able to read your brain waves and like these smart watches, which is able to, I don't know, read your pulse and all those type of things. Just imagine this on an accelerated level, really. Um, it also, though, that it's the realization that kind of like my thoughts are stolen from me. So, and that's where the rebellious part is going to come. I do not want anyone to read my mind, type of thing. It's going to be interesting, especially from 32 onwards, when Saturn is going to be in the sign of Gemini too, right? So Saturn is the planet of kind of like putting a stop to something. So, what, we're going to start with this bang, and then, there's going to be a bit of a chaos. There is going to be a lot of excitement around it. And then Saturn says, is it really working? I don't think so. We need to change. So another changes are coming from the 32, 33 onwards. Uranus, another big topic for Uranus, which I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, but it's the challenging the status quo. So Uranus wants to get rid of anything outdated. It kind of questions the systems and the structures. And it says that it does not fit for the modern society, or we cannot invite everyone into this picture. So we have to be able to somehow make it more accessible, more acceptable for everyone. So that's why Uranus wants us to think outside of the box. So what it looks like that all those topics that I mentioned, gender and neighbors and nationalities and these visa matters and so forth, um, it's kind of like wanting us to be more welcoming somehow. And of course, the duality of Gemini, it's going to come with a lot of good ones and a lot of bad ones as well. It's kind of like when, EU was born, some people were really against it and some people were really excited about it. It's kind of like voting about whether I want to be in the EU or not type of scenario. Also, uh, news agencies, newspapers could be changing. Internet could change completely. Now, that's a very possible as well. So obviously, it is also on the horizon. I'm sure you guys are aware, right? This chat GPT and the AI and all these type of things, AI can make a business photo of you, AI can write articles and all those type of things. And sometimes I'm just wondering, actually human workforce is in danger maybe because of all these technological advancements. Are computers and phones gonna become smarter than us in a way? So let's see. Let's see. Also, I'm thinking that human rights will be becoming a big topic with this. Um, obviously, as I said, both the sign and the planet are connected to humanitarian matters. So, what does it mean to be a human? That's going to be a big question. Uranus represents anything artificial. So while Uranus was in the sign of Taurus, the topic of artificial food has become quite significant. And I think it's going to get carried on in the sign of Gemini. And there's going to be a lot of talk about why is it good and why it's bad type of things. So the opinions will differ. And therefore, it comes again with an element of chaos because we cannot get the facts right about it. With Uranus, it's also about like these genetically modified type of things. So that's going to become a big topic, of course. Also, we might be talking about Gemini represents languages. So how like the interpreters might be kind of losing their job because they're not going to be needed. We're going to have this earpiece or earpiece, and then it's just going to be doing it automatically for us, type of thing. Or maybe I can imagine that I don't know, someone sends you a text message and then it's just gonna get read up to you somehow, or something like that. Um, yeah, I mean, let's be frank. I think we are aware that this is the, this is kind of the way we are heading, right? So probably I haven't said anything shocking in this video, but I kind of tried to collect all of it. Now, my next video is going to be connected to Uranus and Neptune sextile. And also, I will be preparing one on Uranus and Pluto trine as well, because obviously that's quite a big topic also. So, guys, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you can get updated with all these videos. Thank you for being here. Thank you for following me. And I hope to see you with my next video. Have a great day. Bye bye.